awesome. I'm into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a panel that's all about burnout. So, how to recognize signs of it coming, how to avoid it, and how to get through it when it hits. So, to start, one, thank you everyone for coming to join us on this. This is like a very tough topic. It is pretty widespread, but also I think really poorly understood. So, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to join us and talk about it. So, what I want to start with is, in my prep for the panel, I was having a look of how it's defined, how burnout is defined. And it's wild how both vague and kind of unhelpful the definition is. So from the World Health Organization, they define it as an unmanaged chronic workplace stress, which can include exhaustion and energy depletion, cynicism, negativity, and mental distance from your work, reduced efficacy at your job. And then underneath that, they had this huge list of symptoms that everything from headaches, insomnia, gut pain, depression, suicidal ideation, inability to focus, just this wild list. So it's just this thing that can affect you from, like, mind, body, and soul, but is also really poorly misunderstood as to the effect it can have. So starting with you, Dawn, if we could all go around and like introduce yourself, and as much as you feel comfortable, talk about your experience with burnout.
I've just done the panel, so hi again, everyone. I'm Dawn. I write Space Seasons, and I'm also an author and audio engineer, so I do work with a few people in the genre on audiobooks. Burnout hit me a lot last year. Not in the I didn't have time to have burnout, just seriously, but I will touch on quite a few different topics which are quite serious. So I think this panel is really good for helping people find and get support, because we all need it. That's me.
Perfect. How about you, Aoife?
Hi, I'm Aoife Y. I write with Rachel A. Cooper. So I'll just get straight into burnout. For me, has been maybe more of a kind of a cyclical thing. It's been, I suppose, at certain times in my life where I've had kind of big life challenges. And I suppose when I did start writing as well, I wasn't prepared for how much, say, in my change of career, how much it would affect me. And I'm very much a kind of a, when I hyper focus and I get onto something, I will just keep going. And I know I did not recognize the signs of what was happening to me. I thought, for somebody who can see and, and other people and different things, like, I just was not looking at myself. I just kept going. These are the goals I need to meet. I set a very high bar for myself, and I always feel or have felt that I'm not meeting that. And when you do that, there's only so long that you can kind of maintain that. And I think it's great actually that you mentioned about the whole list of things, because it really is individual, how it will present. And sometimes it won't be you that recognizes it. It will be a loved one. And for me, I think having being co-author with Rachel has really helped me to keep the sustainability of being an author kind of alive, because it can be a very lonely thing. You're on your own writing. So I think, I have a tendency to ramble as well. So I'll leave it at that. That's my kind of take. But it's been a cyclical thing that has happened more than once for me. Yeah.
I'm sorry it's happened several times too, but I'm glad you mentioned how just because you're really good at recognizing it maybe in other people, that doesn't mean you're good at recognizing when it happens to yourself. And it's something that even if you kind of get through it once and you're like, job done, that's sorted, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. That's not how it works. So we'll come back to that, but I'm really glad you mentioned that, Aoife. How about you, Chris?
I'm CM Carney, author of The Realms and Quintessence and the eventually coming out middle grade series Nightmare on a Page. I think for me, burnout wasn't what I had always thought it was. It wasn't I worked and wrote 10 books in a year like some of the crazy dudes in our genre. Like, I don't understand how they do that, but that wasn't my thing. It was not a imposter syndrome, which I think contributes to some people's. Mine was a massive life, I guess, challenge, for lack of a better term, like Aoife said. When my wife was diagnosed with cancer, it just kind of tossed a hand grenade in the middle of everything. And I'll get into this a little bit more later, but I think my stubbornness, and like Alaron was probably referencing earlier, the maleness of just keep going, which doesn't work. And I kind of discovered that during this whole process, but slowly getting back, I think. New book should be out soon, which I'm excited about. So back on the horse mostly.
So I'm sorry to hear about your wife. And is she doing better now?
Yeah, I mean, the meds she's on are pretty potent because she had a pretty aggressive cancer, but the chemo's done, her hair's back. But she's going to be on pretty potent meds for 5 years and 10 years, depending on which one you're talking about. So I think that's another thing that people don't really get is there's a lot of the after effects of cancer treatment that doesn't really stop when chemo and radiation are done. It just, so it's, I mean, she's a trooper. I don't think I could handle what she does, but she's getting there, I think.
Well, look, I'm delighted. Like, she's come out the other side of chemo, and I'm also glad that you mentioned because even by the definition I read out, it only mentioned work. It doesn't mention how you could be clinging on, you could be white knuckling through it, or even you could be actually managing things perfectly fine, and then something external comes in and can affect the burnout on top of that. So I'm glad you mentioned that up because like we've only had 3 so far, but they're all completely different.
Yeah.
How about you, Andy? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I typed and I have a very loud keyboard. Hello. I will try that again. I'm Andrea Barstow. I'm an audiobook narrator, and burnout for me is definitely, I'm kind of with Aoife. It's been a cyclical thing for me. So it's a time of year. How many things have I promised? How many things do I need to like? How many books are there coming out? What's the content of them? Oh no, this one was really difficult and I was slower and now it screwed up everything else. And it's a cyclical thing depending on what's going on. And then I think you hit the nail on the head and what Chris brought up, real life comes in, and that just adds on and it makes it more complicated and it makes your fuse shorter. There's less candle to burn out because you've got too many wicks, and that's a lot. My husband's disabled and I'm his caregiver, and it's a unique kind of, you don't think about the pieces. It's when they add together that it starts causing problems. And sometimes we're so focused on those little pieces that we don't notice we're starting to fall apart around them. Especially because I think everybody else is in the same boat. We're all in our houses. We're all at home working. This never leaves. This is here all the time. So even when you're done with the day, that room's still there. It's still there. Work is still here. So learning to separate. So yeah, that's it. I'm on the other side of the camp. I'm a narrator.
It's true, and it's something I didn't consider there, that like the added level of like it's so much harder to separate your work from free time and leisure time, because often it's right around the corner. It's not something you can escape, and that's an added level of difficulty on top of that. How about you, Alaron?
I mean, I think a lot of great stuff has been said. One of the things that you first mentioned is when you looked it up, how it was very vague. And I think that ties into how I view burnout today. If you'd asked me probably 10 years ago about like what writer burnout meant, it would probably be extremes. It's either you can't write anymore or you kill yourself. Like you're just so unhappy. But I think it's really, the way I would define it today is if you're moving in a way that is not really in keeping with you living a healthy life, and that could be physical health, like with me, I gained 100 pounds as I was writing the books. It could be emotional health, where you're just like, maybe you are white knuckling, maybe you are just the biggest badass that can be there, but suddenly you have no one around you. Financial, maybe you're chasing the dragon or doing whatever else. I mean, like if you're operating in a way that doesn't coincide with like creating something good that's sustainable, which is sort of what health is required, then I would say that you're probably moving towards burnout. And then even if you're okay, you're probably just trying to run faster as you go down the hill hoping that if you keep running fast enough, you won't fall. And one of the reasons I think this is really important is that I think that for a lot of people, they think they're either alone if they're feeling it, or that it's just something that happens to somebody else. I went to therapy because in my first profession, I'm a physician, and I definitely saw nothing but burnout and white knuckling and very unhealthy people regularly. Left that. One of the things I say all the time is that when I left, I slept for 14 hours a day for 33 days in a row and woke up feeling like I had actually just hit the biggest bong. Like I was more like I was just a different human being. And then this saved me, like the act of writing and creation and creativity saved me from that. And then burned out from this under the weight of my own expectations and drama and stupid things that really don't matter, but were so pivotal to me at the time. So yeah, I think the reason it's so broad is it's really just like, hey, it should be called like this happens, and be careful because it literally could end your life or ruin the lives around you. So.
And I love that you mentioned that it can come in so many different forms. And even when you're kind of, I love that writing, it saved you, it was an escape for you. But just because you absolutely adore what you do and you love it, that doesn't mean that you still can't get burned out. And I think that can add, I worked in the video game industry before this, and I saw it a lot there. There'd be people who kind of feel like, well, I'm working a job or I'm doing something so many people would kill to do. And I'm actually, if I get burned out, I'm ungrateful. Like there's this idea that it's like, well, I'm so lucky and so I should just be able to keep going. So I think that's in writing and in anything creative, that's like an extra level of pressure on top of everything else that is already going on. So the first and the most pressing thing, and probably one of the biggest parts of this panel, would be like, how do you recognize the signs? What does it look like, for you, or when you spotted it in other people? And how is this something that you can like combat it before you hit that wall that is burnout? I might go back. Wait, now let me point the other way around this time. If you're cool with starting, Aileron.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. Honestly, I don't think it's anything that like is insanely groundbreaking. Have other people around you that can give you a bellwether that, you have a strong enough relationship that they will talk to you. Being vulnerable yourself. At one of the latest conventions I would go to, I would just talk to people about like, yeah, I went to therapy and then I just felt like I was burned out and I just wasn't happy and I was feeling all this pressure that doesn't necessarily real and blah, blah, blah. And I had no less than 5 people, 4 of them men, just kind of quietly start crying and talk about like, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Same thing when I left medicine and I was telling my friends in medicine that I had gone to therapy, which is a very taboo thing to do. You do not go to therapy if you're a physician. Only crazy people do that, despite the fact that we know that we are physicians. We still feel that way, and you certainly don't admit weakness as a physician. And I had no less than like 20 friends start quietly crying. I thought I was the only one. So one is that if you've experienced something, I guarantee you on 8 billion people, a bunch of other people have experienced it. And so like sharing it, it is the definition of what, when I was growing up in my culture, it was called TMI, just like don't share that kind of stuff. But I honestly think that the worst parts of ourselves and humanity thrive when we pretend something isn't happening. So talking about it, knowing that other people are important for yourself in your own life, and yeah, like sharing this kind of stuff. I imagine you guys will probably have people reach out like, oh my God, I didn't know. Can I talk to you? Yeah. So.
And I'm so glad that you shared that with people. And, I do think there's already a weird taboo around therapy. I'm so sad to hear it's so taboo with physicians, people who you would think would know the best of everyone. So I'm really sad to hear that, but I'm really glad that you were able to share that with other people. And I think, especially, like I'm Irish, and there's a real, like, I'm sure Aoife will back me up on this. There's a real, like, you're lad, you're a tough man. You don't have any of this feelings nonsense. And it is so destructive. And it's yeah. So I'm really glad you were able to help people out with that.
Thank you. last thing I'll add is I think normalizing allows for a lot of people to extend themselves and say I was having a hard time, and it allows you to reach people. So one of the ways that I just frame it with people, I'm like, is saying that needing help is just saying that the universe is heavier than you can carry by yourself. That's all it means. And that kind of makes it palatable to be like, all right, well, I don't want to do all that touchy feely bullshit, but maybe we can just talk. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. So anyway, I'm done.
No, for sure. And I like that it's like, oh, it's just talking. It's not touchy feely. You're kind of making it a bit easier for them. How about you, Andy?
Oh man, you hit the nail on the head when you said the whole I work for a video game company. I have a job that like everyone's really jealous of. I should be happy I have it. I'm a voice actor. I have a dream career for so many people. So me whining about like I'm not sleeping. I'm in the booth 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I'm exhausted. Like I don't do that anymore. But like it was just like I can't think. I'm sobbing all the time. I can't do anything outside. I get done for the day and I just stare at the wall. I can't even play a video game. I can't paint. I can't draw. I can't do anything because I'm just empty. And I think one of the earliest indicators for me was if I don't have any fuel left for anything else in my life, if I start missing out on video games, art, conversations with my husband, tabletop gaming, anything, like if I start missing out on the things that I love and can't muster the energy to do even the things that I love, and I am mentally not okay, I want to do those things, I think that's probably for me, it was one of the first indicators that there was something wrong. Like something was going on. And the amount of shame that you feel when you are experiencing something like that, when you have a job that you know people would kill for, and you feel so fortunate and so lucky, and ungratefulness is the furthest thing from your mind, and you just murder yourself thinking, because I'm grateful, I'm an ungrateful bitch, I'm spoiled, I'm a diva, I'm whiny. Just buckle down and freaking do it. It's not that hard, you baby. Meanwhile, you're crumbling on the inside, trying desperately to just pull that sand back together. Please pack it tighter. It'll all be okay. So I think
I really like that comment that came up there, which is I'm not allowed to be mentally ill.
Yeah.
And you really I loved your answer, Andy. Like you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And it's one of those where, and then you add I love the phrase comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah. Because when you're looking at people, and like Chris, you mentioned this as well, people putting out 10 books a year, and then maybe you're sitting there and you're like, well, I'm only doing 3 books a year. I'm only doing 1 book a year. And then you find yourself getting burned out. And then you start going, well, they're doing 10 and they're fine. I'm just not trying hard enough, or I just don't want it enough. And that just, you end up in this hamster wheel where even when you try to relax, you can't, because you're just thinking about work, and it's just, and the lack of energy. And I think it's really scary. You know, I've seen it. I've got a friend, and she's had burnout for 2 years, and she's still sleeping 11 hours every single night because she just physically cannot get out of the bed otherwise. And it's really, I'm so glad you put it like that. You hit the nail on the head, Andy. How about you, Chris?
Going on actually what you said about I'm Irish and a New Englander, which is like a double whammy of we don't talk, and then somebody gets hammered at a Christmas party and all the family secrets pour out kind of thing, which is obviously not a good process. I don't think I do that like the previous generation did as much. And oddly, kind of going on what Stuart said in the comments here, that to me, burnout wasn't a lack of creativity. I just couldn't get the prose and the words out. So to ignore that, perhaps, because obviously that's where the production and the books and the money comes from, I just brainstormed, because that's my literal favorite thing to do. And with this job is the creation aspect of, so I have 40, at least halfway generated ideas that I'm probably never going to get to 90% of them because I don't write that fast. But I couldn't get the words down. So I had all this creative energy pouring out of me, but it was just, I couldn't get the prose for some reason. I would sit there and just stare stupidly at my screen. And it's gotten quite a bit better, but I still don't really fully understand like what the cause of that is and why it was there. Because the creative energy was still bursting. Because I think that's my emotional outlet, is doing that stuff. But the words weren't coming, so I wasn't producing anything that was useful or, ready to show to the world.
That's so interesting. Sorry, not to call your traumatizing time interesting, but you know what I mean? Like the fact that the part of it that you still loved, that was your favorite bit, no bother, knocking out of the park, having a great time. And then that added level of frustration that you can't then actually follow through on anything.
Well, I also knew that was my procrastination method. The words are hard. This stuff is fun and easy. So, and I was aware of that, which has probably made it worse, I would assume. And I think when I was first starting Barrow King and all the other books, I did a lot of the Pomodoro 25-minute sprint thing. And I've kind of gotten away from that. And it's for some reason struggling to, that's not even that hard. Just press a button and do what the thing says and just stop when it stops. But it just seems like it's all those old good habits sort of fell away, and I've struggled to get them back more so than I did when I was originally getting them, which seems odd because when you're forming a new habit, it should be the hard part, not going back to one that you've done before. So
that's interesting, because it might be a the stage of life you're at now, where you are in your career and your books. Oh yeah, sorry, Matt Dinniman. It's like the dream where you want to run, but you just can't. It's that 100%. But it's also, I think, when we're conditioned to morning is to be productive. You're supposed to work 9 to 5. These are the hours you're supposed to do. And I think sometimes we try. I love that you mentioned the Pomodoro, because people act like it's, a gift from God, like this will fix everything and make you the most productive person in the world. But it might not be. It might be, maybe it suits you before and something else suits you now. I'm a weirdo who writes from 4 to 9 p.m. and then takes a break and does some more, because I just discovered I cannot do it morning and evening. So we change where we are, and it might be, I had a point when I started this and I've forgotten. I like that you shared that, Chris, basically. We'll roll with that. Okay, signs of burnout. How about you, Aoife?
I so identify with you right there. That's me. I'm just, things pop in and out of my head at the moment. But I think I recognize it better now, and I really related with what Andy was saying as well about people kind of dismissing. It can be well intentioned, but it's like and it took for somebody. I was going to kind of a mediation. It's going back years ago when I first kind of was I kind of had an aha moment where I had, a well-meaning, well, you're young, you should be happy. And I know at the time I felt very kind of I feel so such a misfit in school, in everything, and all my kind of growing up. And it was but you're young, you should be happy and all of this. And I was going to, it was mediation to do with before I met my birth mum. And the counsellor there just said it was it's okay to not be okay, and that just because somebody's telling you that you should be okay because you have all these other good things going on in your life, it's all relative to your own experience. And I've still kind of held on to that. And I think what I recognize now, to get back to what the signs are, I'm a morning person, and I'm very much driven by my energy, and I've had to kind of go with the days when the energy levels are not where I want them to be, and they do fluctuate. And it can be, I have 3 children, and there can be a lot of unpredictability. 2 of them have additional needs. And so I have to be able to say, okay, today I didn't sleep great last night, and I get up, I'll know the feeling. It's kind of that low, feeling. Or sometimes even a kind of a hollowness, and a feeling of dread, I actually don't want to get out of the bed, because I know I have to go out into the office, sit down, and I'm facing a fear that I'm rubbish at writing. And that's and I'm sitting in front of the computer then. And one thing that has helped me with that, to get over that, is I do dictation here. That has helped. That I started that like in January, and I had to really force myself, because I just thought there's no way I can speak. I mean, I can't even picture what it is, what I was trying to write or whatever. And I think I just had to say it's okay to be messy in whatever I'm doing in all things, not just in my writing. So I think I recognize those signs now, and I'm a bit kinder to myself. In the beginning, it was like, no, you have to do 2K words today. And these, like, as I say, I had these high bars set for myself, and eventually I just was like, no. And I wouldn't take weekends off either. Now, when I say I wouldn't take weekends off, I would get up at 5 and I'd write till maybe 9. That's what I used to do. And even on a Saturday and a Sunday. And like this morning, like I know with the panels on this week, I know my social battery just drops very quickly. So this morning I'm just like I'm not getting up at I'm not getting up at 5. So I am starting to recognize that I'm being kinder to myself. And I think that's because sometimes we'll be very kind to other people, and if you take a moment and actually listen to what you're saying to yourself, you would never say to other people what you say to yourself sometimes. And it's just to try to get an awareness of, why am I talking to myself like that? I would never diss people the way I'm dissing myself. It's this little internal monologue going on. So I think it's kind of sometimes to try and just be aware of that and say, feck that voice in your head. Just go and just feck off, So
I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that we don't talk enough about, is like how lovely and caring we'll be to other people, but when it comes to us, we're often terrible. And the like pushing, you're like, oh, I didn't get 2K done today, so I'm actually going to get extra early tomorrow so I can catch up to that beforehand, and I won't take the weekends off because I'm not allowed, because I didn't hit it. And you just end up in this like constant spiral. Whereas if your friend came to you and said they were doing that, you'd be like, well, what are you at?
Yeah. I've had people like either in the author community, outside the author community, like going, oh, ask for help, or, if you ever need anything like that. And I just won't. I'm like, I appreciate it. I love that they've offered that. And I just can't. I tell other people, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I fall over myself to help anybody. But I can't. It's like a mental block. I'm just like, I don't want to bother people.
Oh, why did you say you don't want to bother people? I felt that in here, Aoife. I felt that in here.
That shot, yeah.
Oh, how about you, Dawn? Signs of burnout.
I spent a lot of my time in therapy over the years. I suffered with an eating disorder for 16 years, and I spent 3 years at hospital. So I kind of know all my big burnout signs, and I started to get them around 2021. So I pulled back a lot from some of the communities, stopped doing admin for quite a few groups and stuff that I was doing, and through 2022, and just sort of tried to concentrate a little bit more on myself. Obviously with COVID and everything, it was like life just shit the bed basically for a lot of us. And it just, I wasn't just in one house. My house fell apart at the same time, and I was actually just living in one room. So it was just like one room for like the 2 years of COVID. So it was extremely difficult. My mum got sick. I lost my mum. Then it was like we lost a close family friend. My editor died in the April, and I've currently lost my stepdad this last year. So this last 12 months for me has just been pure shit, just the last 4 years basically. But for me last year, I kind of hit that point where it was like, I do self-harm. I have tried to commit suicide. And it was at that point I looked at the screen. I wasn't signing in on Discord as myself because I couldn't face people. I was actually signing in on a different account and just trying to, just get on with life. And it just wasn't working. And it got to a point where I was like, I can't do it anymore. And I just shut everything off, took everything off my phone, and took 2 weeks out. I spoke to my doctors, and the first thing everybody does say, which is what Aoife said, everyone says reach out, talk to us, but you can't. And even the people that I did say, keep me company in Discord, just come and chat to me, whatever. There was no one around. So it's just, and I get different time zones and things, but we did actually lose another community member last year who did commit suicide. So last year was just in general, just the shit. But I recognized that I was getting to that big point, and I went, no. So I cut everything off and took 2 weeks out. And eventually, I'll be fair, I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to join any communities again, didn't want to sign back on Facebook. It actually took a lot of guts for me to actually just sign back in as myself, which I had to build up to. And I can understand why people do disappear and don't come back. And I've seen it in our community. There's quite a few people that have just vanished, which is extremely sad. But I completely understand, because I didn't want to do it myself. The only way I got through, I had deadlines last year. The only way I got through some of my working days was because I had those deadlines that I had to keep for other people. That was fine. The work side of it was fine. But when it came to writing, I just had to do what I had to do. It wasn't fun for me anymore. It became more than just a chore. And for me, I've always written, like I've said in other panels, since I was 6. I've always written since I was 6 years of age. That was my stress relief. But when I found I couldn't have my stress relief and I couldn't write, it was even worse. So me getting over that last year was right. I'm going to write something completely for me. This is my story. I'm just going to start something and just run with it. So come November last year, I wrote a series for myself, posted it to the road. Absolutely loved it. The fans that were reading it at the time actually got me through my stepdad passing away. They understood what was going on, and them talking to me and saying, we understand, you don't have to post, you don't have to write every day. That kind of kept me going as well. So, but seeing the signs for your own burnout is extremely difficult. Extremely.
Thank you for sharing that, Dawn. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry you've had such a rough time, and it was just everything on top of everything. Like when things, and it doesn't that always feel like it's the way when like things fall apart, everything falls apart. But like an absolute kudos to your strength and your dedication that you were able to step back, and also like, and I love that you mentioned how hard it is. Absolutely, Matt. Like we love you, Dawn, and thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
But
I want to give you a hug.
yeah, I think all of us do. I think all of us do.
I think that the hardest thing is to reach out, and the most important thing is there are professionals there who do completely understand. I actually spent some of the hardest phone calls I ever made would be like to the Samaritans, and it'd just be like, and I just literally cry on the phone for 20 minutes to some complete stranger, and that was fine. They were there, and that's what I needed at the time. But I'm not like this last, this is just like it over the years, but there's plenty of professional people that can really help. And please reach out to them. If you can't reach out to your friends, reach out to them.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because my next question was going to be, how do you recover from this? Something that can be so debilitating. We've heard everything from like your life becomes work. You cannot even relax. You can't do anything else, to suicidal ideation, ending up in hospital. Like this can affect you in every single way. So when this happens and when you're going through it, how do you start to come out the other side? What are some of the things that helped you along the way? I'm going to go in a random order this time. I might start with you, Andy.
Yes, thank you. I think that's one of the hardest questions, because I almost feel like I can't answer it because it is cyclical and it keeps coming back. But I also think that that's not fair at the same time, because that's just mental health. So I've learned slowly but surely. Number one, just trying to regulate things like your schedule, the things you can control, trying to get them under control, setting realistic goals for yourself, setting realistic examples, tracking things so you know what realistic is. For the people like narrators, where we're working contract to contract with different people and delivering things like that, it's a like making sure you are not over promising, making sure I track I'm very fortunate. I have a great team behind me that we have tracking documents for every book. So I know how long, like how fast each book reads and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of helps with regulating that. But outside of that, doing things, remembering that you are deserving of time, not just your work. So things like taking a bath, taking time to shower, making sure that you're sleeping, cooking food, like cooking food. It is, if you can learn to cook, it is insanely meditative to cook. If you can get into that kind of sink and just do it, like, or whatever you have, paint, draw, sculpt, run, exercise, do something. There is enough time because you're the one controlling that part of it. There is enough time, because if you don't make the time now, there won't be any of you left for time later. So trying to remember that you are worthy of making time for, you are worthy just for being you, and that you need to remember that you are an important aspect of all that. So learning what helps you kind of separate, what helps you buoy yourself in those moments, that can be extremely helpful. Outside of what other, like asking for help, getting professional help, that kind of thing. Like those are just practical things that you can then do in your life essentially, and they may or may not help you. It's individual.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think if anyone is listening to this, if there's one thing to take away from this, it's that you are worthy, that you haven't messed up, you're not weak, you are worthy of help. And sorry, just my heart's breaking. I'm so sorry that you've all gone through this. It's so horrendously tough. But okay, things to help you recover. What do you do when throws out? I might jump to you, Aoife. I'm just gonna hop around.
Yeah, I mean, again, it'll look different for everybody, but I suppose I can only really just talk about, like from my own experience. So, looking at like why am I, when it comes specifically to writing, looking back at why am I doing this? What is it that drives me? And again, a big thing for me is setting boundaries. So I'm not great on rigid routine. But what I have found is I can kind of look at a flexibility. So on my high energy days, I might say, okay, I'll look at setting, I'm going to, work, is an hour. Can I do an hour? Whatever is least daunting for me to do on, say, if it was a low energy day, I might only be 500 words. And I might surpass that. But if I say to myself, right, just do that, or just write for a half an hour, I find that kind of helps me, because otherwise, if I set that bar too high, I'll just be like, that's going to take X amount of time, X amount of energy that I just don't feel that I have. So when I have a flexibility, have a kind of a max min goal, and just set that for, like, if I even was to say Monday to Friday, then I'm more likely to kind of do it and maintain it. The other thing is definitely the whole connected, being with, like where you might need a body double to do some tasks or different things I've seen before, like going on, for me, either, and I haven't got back to it, doing it. It's become this big thing in my head, but going back on writing sprints in groups. I found it great. And like my mum ended up in hospital. She has dementia, but she had a fall earlier in the year. And so my mornings became very unpredictable, and she's out and everything is fine, but I can't, again, in my head, I haven't got back to where I want to be on that. But I do think having somebody who is an author, who's writing, who knows, what the struggles can be in the creative side of things, and to have somebody to confide in is very, very important. And know what energizes you, because it will look different for every person. I'm an introvert. It doesn't mean that I don't like spending time with people. I love it. But I have social anxiety and I'm introverted, so I will need that time after being out with the whole group of people to just kind of go, okay, I need to recharge for a while. I'd love to be in the comments all the time. I'd love to be, on Facebook a lot more, but I know that I can only manage so much. And I have, again, just knowing what I can manage and what I can't, and being okay with that. So
that's really good advice. And I love that you'll adapt depending on your energy that day. And I think that's something we're all terrible at. It's like, no, this is what I said I would get done this week. But I love that you adapted day by day. How about you, Chris?
I think I'm stubborn. So the setting my word goals and not meeting them annoys me. And I think during this whole past couple of years process, I had to learn to be, forgive myself for not reaching goals, especially like you say, it's like, I don't do, I think, a lot of the comparison to other authors in most ways, but I do see how the hell does Seth Ring do 10,000 words in a day? And when I'm like, I got 506, and I had to figure out that pull back from that. And I didn't want to like pull out of the community or anything, but just pull my own expectations and just let it be occasionally, and not let that become where I'm sitting on my laurels and not pushing to do further, but give myself that, I guess, time to figure it out and try to analyze why I was not being productive. And it doesn't help. I do have some insomnia, and which has only gotten worse as I've gone past 50 with the damn prostate making me have to pee every day in the middle of the night. So I don't have that. Like I used to back when I was young, it was like 8 hours of sleep, like clockwork, didn't wake up at all, woke up energized. I don't have that energy anymore. And I don't think I really addressed that before. I just kept expecting that I was going to be the same way as I was. Mm-hmm. And I definitely need to start doing more exercise. I'm very proud of Alaron for the change he's gone through.
Seriously.
So, because not just the health and you look better, but the energy and you sleep better. And it's like a cascading effect that's going to improve everything. So, I got to do that too. As everybody says, probably has to do that. I don't know if I really answered any questions there, but
no. But I really like that you mentioned like you're not just comparing yourself to say other authors, but you're also comparing yourself to how you were. Mm-hmm. So it's like a double whammy in which it's like, well, no, but I used to do this and I used to do that, but now I should still be able to do that. But like every year we're at a different point in our life. Every week we might be in a different point in our life, and that adaptability is really important. It's really tough, but it's really, really important. How about you, Dawn?
I'm kind of, I have to have a pretty strict schedule. I can't kind of do things any other way. So I am pretty strict with myself for that. And I set myself, when I left my day job in 2019, I used to drive a sandwich van round, which was great, just delivering, listening to audiobooks all day, serving people food. And when I came out of that, I said, and a few things I needed to keep on top of was my health. I'd actually lost like 70 pounds the year before, which was really helped me. And I was like, I need to keep on top of my health and everything. Then COVID hit, and it was just like, and everything I actually lost my sense of smell and taste and everything with COVID. It still hasn't come back. So the only kind of things that I can smell and taste will be like sweet, salty, spicy. I blow my husband's head off quite often. Spicy food. For me, sort of like learning to look after myself last year, learning to write again for myself rather than for other people. And I'd say it is really difficult to just generally look after yourself. You get that sleep, finish work at 5 o'clock. Like Andrea says, cook food. I can't cook food properly because I can't taste it, but I try and buy things that are easy for like my husband to make and stuff like that. And it's like, but just generally looking after myself in other ways. I try and get out and walk. It's not always possible, but I try and walk. And just people see me online most days, and it's just that little touch base. Even if it's just a good morning, even in my own Discord server, people know if I say good morning, I'm usually up, I'm walking, I'm doing stuff. Basically talking to people, even if it is that professional person, talk to them, explain what's going on. Grief doesn't hit, as they say, for about 6 months, and I'd say it was 6 months after I lost my mum that things got really difficult last year. And again, after we lost my stepdad, it's sort of like this last sort of like summer, it got bad again, and I was like, no, this is how grief works. And you do go through all that, the sort of the emotions with anger, frustration, and guilt for all your feelings when you shouldn't be. And it's just processing things and working through things. Life can be extremely difficult, but creative people really burn out a lot. And I think I see it so much in our community. They sign book deals with Podium, they've never written a book before. They've written this book that's just suddenly taken off. And then they come off this massive high and don't know how to cope with it. And I think it's really important that we can try and instill in some of the new people that are coming into the area that there's certain things that are okay to talk about, which is like why this is so important. And recover, I'm back to writing, and even though I'm strict with my goals, like Aoife said, I learned flexibility with my mum passing and stuff and doing things. It was like I had to say no, and I couldn't feel guilty about it. You do feel guilty at first, but then it's like, no, I can't feel guilty. That's your problem. It's not my problem. It's extremely difficult to get to that point where you can start to learn and address that through all the communities that you're part of. But we all keep pushing on, and hopefully perhaps help someone one day. We're all available online. It doesn't take 2 seconds to chat to someone. So,
but you're doing that. You're by like coming onto this panel and like sharing so much. Like you are actively helping, and like I really hope that anyone listening to this, and I love that you mentioned like new authors coming in, like maybe someone who has a breakout success and is suddenly overwhelmed by what this means and what that follow-up is. So you are contributing to that. So thank you again for being here today. How about you, Alaron?
Well, let's see. One, anybody listening that wants to talk, you guys can hit me up. Just like email me. I'm happy to chat. Two, I like that there's various things that were mentioned as far as like you should cook for yourself. You should exercise. Like we say these things because we know that they're generally good. But one of the things that I don't think we're necessarily framing right is that burnout is sort of this like catch-all term that we're using to describe a form of mental illness. We're talking about something that leads to suicide, that leads to destruction of our health, leads to destruction of our lives, the lives around. Like it's a real thing. It doesn't have necessarily a DSM-5 diagnosis, or maybe it's not a good one, but it's real. And we don't need to like be uber, PhD, MD, whatever, to be like, this is a problem, I'm seeing it, so we should try to figure out a cure for it. Part of this conversation has made me think of the time where I was in med school and we had a lecturer come in to teach us about major depressive disorder. And it's like, okay, so it's these 3 main criteria and it's these 5 like minor criteria. And if you match up with these, then you have major depressive disorder. And like every hand shot up at the end. And his last slide is like, but the symptoms are the same for being a medical student. So you guys are probably fine. And everyone was like, yeah, this is what's going on. A lot of my friends that were physicians that I talk to now that have now gone to therapy, right? It's very, very marked how we have a lot of the same symptomology going through residency as PTSD. There's a show called New Amsterdam, which referenced a study where the difference in the MRI and MRA of someone that has been through a shooting and someone that is perceived to have gone through a shooting is exactly the same. Your mind, I mean, and this is like old wisdom. Bruce Lee has a famous quote of like, never talk bad about yourself. Your mind doesn't know if you're joking or not. Like, this is a real thing that has real implications on all of us, and treating it as such, as an actual thing, like I broke my arm, I should fix that. I'm suffering and unhappy, and these are the hallmarks for me, or I can see the hallmarks for you because I know you really well. That's a real thing. How do you fix it? Sadly, that depends on the person too. You might struggle your entire life. You probably won't go on a weekend retreat and just be better. That doesn't seem fair. I hope that's one of you, but but like, it is the same things that we're talking about. And one of the reasons that I wanted to frame it as mental illness is that if you came from like, if an NFL player like tore his ligaments, right? Yes, he's going to get surgery, but he's definitely going to be prescribed yoga. He's definitely going to be prescribed meditation. He's definitely going to be prescribed like PT in the house, right? So like the holistic things that lead to health overall also help to deal with all types of unhealth. So I appreciate the shout out. And again, I've been very clear about this on my channel. I am an addict to food. I believe I'm an addict to high fructose corn syrup the way people are addicts to crack. I think that it is true about most Americans, or anyone actually in the UK system, because the food seems kind of similar. But like, I would not have been able to get this monkey off my back, which I tried, without help. And I got on Mounjaro, and that saved my life. I just strictly think it saved my life. 95% of the admissions that I ever made into the hospital were dealt with obesity, heart attack, stroke, hypertension, CHF. We call those the big three. Like, I would get an admission, like, well, he's got the three. Okay, so he has hypertension. Are they okay? He's like, yeah, he's really here for the pneumonia. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it's so common in the US that you're shocked if somebody doesn't have it. So like, I say all that to say, it's a real thing. You're not alone. You're not a piece of shit if you feel bad. Bunch of people are having issues. I've known the biggest, jockiest guys I've ever met that you just think are just thugging, are having issues. You are stronger for asking for help. You're stronger for asking for help before it gets critical. And if you don't know where to start, that sounds very like me. I knew something was wrong, and that's why I stopped writing. I didn't know how to fix it, but I did say, well, what can I do? So I just started doing healthier things, and surprise, surprise, I'm happier today than I was. And I also needed help. I needed chemical help for my chemical problem. There's no rules. It's just, can you get points on the board? And what worked for me might partially work for you, but what I'm saying might sound like fucking Greek, and you need to talk to Dawn. There's a reason we need all of us, because none of us have the answer. So I hope tomorrow's a little bit easier, and if it's not, that's okay. So.
Damn, Alaron, that was perfect. I loved that you mentioned the diagnostic manual, because when I was looking this up, there was a big hubbub a couple of years ago because they added it to the International Classification of Diseases, but it's still not considered a medical condition. And it's wild because, further info, this affects anything from between, if anyone's out there feeling alone, like in the States, they've actually no idea how many people this affects. It seems to be anything between 32% of the workforce to 52%. They don't know, because it is so widespread and it affects everyone so differently. And absolutely, I second, third, and fourth, absolutely everything Alaron said. Like, there is nothing wrong with you if you are going through this. You are not weak. The two people could be in exactly the same situation and deal with it entirely differently, and that is valid. It doesn't mean one is stronger than the other. It's nothing to do with it. It is all down to your own individuality and how you, and asking for help and reaching out. That makes you, in my opinion, the biggest badass of them all, because that is so difficult to do. So we've got about 6 minutes left, and Geneva actually had a fabulous idea, which I absolutely loved, which is when we like, let's start winding this down a little bit. I want everyone to go around again and say, who they are. But if you could talk about maybe a resource, a book, or something that helped you that maybe could help others, it would be amazing if you could all share that. Would anyone like to start, or I can hop back through Dawn if anyone would like to jump in first. Okay, Dawn, yeah, work away.
The bed's just disappeared. It's fine.
I saw that. It was adorable.
He had his treats. So I have a couple of books that I could recommend that kind of helped me. And one of the biggest ones was When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. I think it was about 2010, 2008, something like that. And it was just, everybody does feel guilty when they say no, so that really helped me to understand saying no was okay. And I think there's one other book, 18 Minutes, Find Your Focus in 18 Minutes. That one really helped me as well. And Bobby's like, yes, that was a good book.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Bobby.
He's got his foot over the screen now.
It's all good. He's all fine. He just wants to feel included. How about you, Aoife?
Yeah, two things. I suppose not a physical book in I'm mad into stationery, and sometimes I'll just splurge. It's kind of, celebrate your wins. So just like a really nice journal. This is like a Charlotte Bronte. It has all the words in there. I just find it really inspiring. I have things like that. An online resource, and it's from a fellow author. I just find it really helpful. I listen to either the full, there may be 6 or 7 minutes sometimes, or there's shorts. Seth Ring does brilliant videos. There was one there recently just on how to recharge your creativity when it runs dry. But he's got a whole range of them, like usually daily. And he also does writing sprints as well. I think it's just they're on the time when my school run is on. So I think just that would be a great one that I would recommend. Yeah.
That's great. And especially because it's from a fellow author as well. Mm-hmm. How about you, Chris?
I don't know if I have a singular book. I have, over the last couple of years, been reading a lot of Ryan Holiday's Stoic stuff. Which I was an ancient history major back in the dark ages of my college years. So Stoicism's always kind of appealed to me. So I think it's a interesting philosophy to kind of try to find balance. It doesn't really deal with mental health or anything specifically. I like the thought processes. So
is there an aspect of Stoicism you find helpful?
I kind of think that one of the things I like the most is that you can't control other people and what they think, and so just kind of try to deal with yourself the best. Most other people, even when they're lashing out at you or other people, are just usually unhappy themselves. And I think if you can kind of see it that way, as opposed to they're just being big dickheads, not only does it make it so you're not going to take it as personally, but you can kind of think, okay, maybe there's crap going on in their lives that I don't know about. They're not just raging assholes. I mean, sometimes they are, but I just think that the balance it tries to teach, and it does have a big focus on like personal responsibility, I guess, for lack of a better term, but it's not like slamming you on the head saying you have to do 2,000 words a day. So it doesn't, I don't think it was really like I said, anything to do with a mental health perspective. It's more of a philosophical approach.
I really like that though. I really like the sound of that.
His book, The Daily Stoic's good. Like, it's right here on my shelf. And I could probably look at that. It's got a little ribbon, so I know which day I was at last. It's probably been a month since I picked it up. And it's like literally has by the day of the month and day of the year, it's meant to just pick up for like the rest of your life whenever you remember, I guess. And it has
That's a
some
beautiful
thought
idea.
on, I think he does go by months with like a topic. But it's just a little one-page blurb on whatever the hell topic he's talking about, and it gives you a focus to think about, and so but usually you don't have to sit there and read like a whole book on philosophy, just like a 300-word little paragraphs of stuff. So I find it helpful.
And how about you, Andy?
I really enjoy the contrast of my recommendation to that one. It's just very enjoyable in my head because one of the things that I was looking at reviews one day. I'll make this really fast. I was making reviews one day and I didn't see any bad reviews, or I had asked my husband about it and I said, "What do you mean there's no bad reviews on that? There should be. That doesn't make any sense." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "No, there should be. It's controversial. There should be bad reviews on it." And he said, "Are you looking for bad reviews?" And I said, "No, but they're supposed to be." And he said, "Did you ever think about the fact that you seek validation so much from other people that you actually want them to validate your negative thoughts about yourself as well as the positive ones?" And I was like, "I don't appreciate being read like that casually on a Tuesday. You're an asshole." My husband's amazing. But what that brought me to is a book called Existential Kink. And it is by Carolyn Elliott. And what it is our how much we get off on beating ourselves up. How much negative self-talk can be this weird self-fulfilling cycle of you want people to validate your worst opinions about yourself, how these self-destructive behaviors that you have towards yourself and how bad that can be in your relation with everyday life. So she's a PhD on the subject. She's amazing. So Carolyn Elliott, Existential Kink.
I think you just called out, I think your husband, just called out every single creative who ever lived, actually.
Yeah.
Damn.
He said it.
How about you, Alaron?
So yeah, first of all, I feel like everyone just felt the mic drop that your husband did on you. I mean, I think everyone was like, "God damn, that was a good one. That was pretty deep."
I'll let him know.
It was pretty, yeah. So only nerds read books. So I have a video for you guys. Blue Zones. It is a 4-part Netflix series, basically about looking at 4 different areas of longevity and health on the planet. I think, because I know we're out, if you have a healthy environment, you have much more likely to have healthy outcomes. And if you have an unhealthy environment, you're much more likely to have unhealthy. There's a reason that certain traumas run through families like an unhealthy river as the centuries pass. And there's a reason that one happy family you guys may have come across, they all seem like they're kind of doing better. And when they get into a fight, it's almost silly. That's it. That's basically what this show is about. And I wholly recommend watching it. It's a great thing to watch with family or just by yourself. It's only 4 hours long, 4 1-hour things. I've watched it 5 times. And it's written right here. So I hope that it helps you in any way near as much as it's helped me. So.
Okay, so that was phenomenal. Thank you all so much for coming on. It's so hard to talk about this stuff, and you all did so beautifully. I don't know about anyone watching, but I certainly took a load of advice I'll be putting into practice from here on out. So yeah, now we do the royal wave. Thank you everyone else for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did.
Thanks, y'all.